Home invasion. Hi everyone. This incident happened about 5 years ago. This is a story that I never really tell anyone anymore because most people are either uncomfortable hearing it or make well-meaning comments about what I should have done in the situation without really understanding just how differently your mind works when you're experiencing absolute panic. But here's my story. I was living in a relatively nice apartment in downtown Memphis, working as an ophthalmic technician. I arrived home from work at my usual time, around 4:30 p.m., unlocked my door and went inside. I set my phone, wallet, and keys on the kitchen island, and entered my front door shut loudly behind me. I then began taking care of some errands around the house. Having grown up in a small town, it was a habit for me not to lock my door during the day, especially when I knew my husband would be home soon anyway. I've never forgotten to lock my door once in the 5 years since this day. I walked through my bathroom and into my large walk-in closet and began hanging up the laundry that I'd started earlier in the day before work. My front door opened and I smiled with surprise. My husband was home a little early and I happily called out to him, but I was met with silence and slowly began to feel that sinking feeling of something is wrong crawling up my spine. I tried to shake it off, thinking that maybe my husband just didn't hear me, so I walked out into my living room area. Standing on the other side of my kitchen island was a complete stranger. He was male, older than me. I would guess around his 50s, but it's difficult for me to recall the exact facial features or details from this moment. And he was just standing there, staring at me. No ski mask, no weapon, just watching me. I wondered if he'd maybe walked into the wrong apartment and was going to apologize and leave, but as he continued to stare, I realized I needed to do something other than just gape at the stranger in my house. I stood taller, puffed up my chest in an attempt to look more threatening, which is hard to do as a small female, and used a loud, clear voice telling him to get out of my apartment, that he had no business being here. He completely ignored me, like I hadn't even spoken. Then he began to pick up my things, my cell phone, my keys, my wallet. He picked them up methodically and put them into his own pockets. That's when it truly hit me that this person was dangerous, and I was naive enough to believe this was all a mistake until that moment. I darted forward toward the only other device I had that would allow me to get help, my computer. I had to take a few steps closer to the intruder in order to reach it, but still had about 12 to 15 feet between us, so I knew I could grab it and run before he could reach me. As I picked it up and turned to run, I saw him start to move after me, and I sprinted back toward the bathroom because it was the only place I can go and put two locked doors between us, my bathroom door and the closet door. I slammed and locked the first door, and within seconds I could hear him messing with it, trying to pry it open. I ran into the closet and locked that door too, opening my computer and getting on Facebook Messenger to contact my husband. I sent message after message, pleading with him to call 911 and tell them that there was an intruder in the apartment. He got the messages within minutes and assured me that he had a dispatcher on the phone and was leaving work himself to try and get to me if he could. I waited and waited. The bathroom door opened and the intruder came inside. He moved to the closet door and started trying to break that door down too. Here's the part where people usually start giving me advice on how I should have acted, but all I can tell you is that I was frozen with fear, shock, but I didn't scream or cry or search for a weapon in that dark closet. I didn't brace the door or try to hold it closed. I just kneeled in my closet and waited to die because I just knew that's what was going to happen anyway. People like to tell me that I lived in an apartment. Surely if I had screamed, someone would have heard and came to help. Surely there was something heavy enough in my closet to use and defend myself. Hell, even the laptop I had would hurt if I swung it at someone. Why didn't I do anything? I don't really have an answer for that, but the closet door miraculously held. I heard frustrated footsteps go back out into the living area, things breaking, bottles shattering. My drawers, refrigerator, and cabinet doors were being flung open as things were torn out of them. I continued to sit in that closet, silently crying, wanting to leave but feeling that death was inevitable. I feel awful about my selfishness in that moment, but I messaged my mom, who lived a 15-hour drive away, and told her what was happening. I desperately wanted comfort and to tell her how much I love her. I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine the fear and helplessness I put her through, knowing her daughter was in danger and there was nothing she could do to help. She messaged me constantly, begging me to keep replying. I told her I would as long as I could, but I also told her to tell my brothers I love them, tell my husband pushed through whatever happened next if it ended badly for me. The intruder started messing with the closet door again, mumbling disjointed words that I couldn't really distinguish. I remember hoping that the police would get to the apartment before my husband, that he wouldn't be the one to find me in whatever state this invader left me in. The front door opened again, and it was my husband, shouting for me. The intruder walked out toward the living room, where the front door was located, and I opened the door and darted from the closet to find my husband on the ground with him, pinning him in place. The man kept mumbling, at times yelling, but never really put up much resistance. This entire part, though, is a blur for me. I remember feeling the room was spinning, filled with fear, mostly for my husband at this point. Eventually, the police found the apartment. It took them about 25 minutes to arrive, which still blows my mind. I know time seems to move slowly during scary situations, so I thought it was less than that, but from the time my husband dialed 911 to the time officers arrived, it was 25 excruciating minutes. This isn't intended to bash them in any way, it just felt like this was an unusually long response time for a home invasion. They got my belongings back from the man and took them out of my apartment. I numbly went through the process of filing a police report, telling them what happened. One of the officers commented that I should really keep my door locked at all times. I remember feeling like he was being insensitive at the time, or blaming me for what happened, but I later recognized his words were coming from experience. I'm sure he's seen the situation end differently for other women. Within 30 minutes, the scariest incident of my life was over, but I've carried the fear, the violation, the anxiety of having someone intrude my space for years. If it happened to me once, it could happen again. If this or something similar has happened to you and you're still struggling with the aftermath of it, the sleepless nights, the laying awake listening for sounds of forced entry, the nightmares, the constant checking and rechecking your locks, this is what eventually helped me. A year after this took place, my husband and I moved to the Midwest for his job. We selected a safe town with a nice apartment complex and chose a third-floor apartment with only one point of entry. I looked up every statistic on crime for the neighborhood, finding that an isolated incident of car theft was the only thing reported in decades. I still couldn't sleep at night. It was definitely better than staying in the same apartment in Memphis, but my husband often works night shifts now, and I simply couldn't continue being terrified to sleep at night. I realized my biggest fear wasn't that something could happen, but that if it did, I was just as unprepared now as I was then. I hadn't changed anything other than locking my door, and I knew I would likely freeze up again and leave my life up to being able to hide well enough, or having a door hold long enough to save me. And that was just unacceptable. I walked into a martial arts school with an excellent self-defense program, introduced myself, and started taking classes. At first I was quiet, hiding in the back room and generally keeping to myself. My instructor, who was both incredibly kind and incredibly insightful, slowly built up my confidence and brought me out of my bubble of fear. After several months of training, I finally shared my reason for taking classes with him, and he's worked with me tirelessly to give me the ability to protect myself in any environment. I've been training for years now, and the difference it has made in every aspect of my life is unbelievable. The meek, quiet girl that waited to die in her closet doesn't exist. I'm confident, I'm strong, I'm worthy of living and protecting myself in my home, and I'm no longer ashamed of how I handled the situation I was in, but also understand what steps I can take to ensure that I'm safe.